For further analysis of these stories, Mr. Olusegun Okunade is the chairman of Ikeja District Society of ICANN, and he joins us now to look at this in detail. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time. Uh,
Thank you very much, Frank, for having me. My
yeah,
pleasure to be here.
it's good to have you again join us. I mean, you've seen some of these stories, but let's start from the first one. Or maybe I should allow you to start from the one that catches your attention first.
Yeah, pretty well. The four topics before us seems to be interesting and fascinating. But let me start on the one that I know impact the common man and the masses. And I'll look from the aspect of the government talking about increasing the non-oil sector. It's something that is quite welcoming. Ask yourself that been growing. Whatever growth that you've seen, which we attribute to about 6% in the analysis given to us, is majorly from the financial, the fintech world that have actually grown over the years. The issue there is, I would advise that government should look critically into one of the threats of that is posing the growth of this non-oil sector, and that's security. Insecurity in the sense that even locally, the food scarcity, it's on the high side. We can attribute that the global space is having its own challenge, but you ask yourself, what have we done domestically to make sure that our people enjoy it? And this was brought to bear during the COVID-19, seeing every country going back to drawing board on how they can improve their local content to make sure that their citizens are self-sufficient. And this is why we are addressing the government, that we have the potential, both human capital, the resources, to increase and improve on the non-crude oil sector. But the major threat is insecurity. And if that can be addressed, I can tell you that we can have as high as over 10 to 15% with the financial improvement in the technological aspect, which is gaining so much attention. And the other one that I might want to draw your attention to is the improvement in the TCN arm of
just
the
before you go to
freehand
TCN, yes, just before you go to TCN, let's extensively deal with these. The first one you talked about, which is about the non-oil sector. If you look at the amount budgeted, that's about 3.8 trillion naira. How significant do you think this will impact on that sector, and how well should we begin to apply these funds? Because implementation is another thing. Yes, you mentioned the issue of insecurity, which is a challenge. Yes, understood. But then again, if you look at the way we go about implementing some of this initiative, is also cause for concern sometimes among stakeholders. Talk to us about that.
I have said this times without number, Nigeria has the best policy in the world. The only gap we have is implementation, which has actually created a setback even for us as a nation. Going by what you asked, the value, the figure in question is it's fine, but how do we monitor some of the funds disbursed into some of these apps? One of the critical things, if we must improve the non-oil sector, aside insecurity that we are faced with now, is infrastructure. And I think I want to give kudos to this administration, but at the same time, security has been a threat. You can imagine the rail system in the aspect of transportation, moving some of these food items from the north, connecting to the south, and even within the southern region, the western region, you are able to move this thing, devoiding them of moving on the road. Within a jiffy, you can see them get to their destination without anybody, clamoring. And that will yield, when you are able to discharge or sell some of the things that you are able to produce, it gives more rights for you producing more. But you discover that Nemes, the man that is wearing that masquerade, calling security, is threatening some of these things. People devoid themselves of moving via the rail because of the fear of being attacked. They cannot move by road. Our roads are dilapidated in such a way that even those that are moving some of these food items, even by the road, is not. And that's why I keep saying the only thing that is contributing majorly to this non-oil sector is the information technology that we have embraced. In one of your reports, you discussed the issue of the financial inclusion, and you discovered that the level at which fintech is actually moving is assisting us. So many, you heard about a particular, some young guys of little weight selling, some of their products out of the country, earning so much dollar. And you know what?
Okay.
Paying so much tax even to the government.
Let's quickly move to the next story, on the list here. Yes, you talk about the issue of fintech. I mean, how the next story, which talk about the fact that COVID-19 has triggered a rise in financial inclusion. Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise, even though it came with a lot of negative impact initially.
Yeah, I've been an advocate of saying that COVID-19 actually resets some of the things that we've not been looking in that direction for a while. And I've always seen that as a blessing, much more than the negative aspect we're looking at. Everybody is actually overcoming because it's a radical change that we did not prepare for. That's why we consider it to be so much negativity. If you look at the death rate, you can't compare it to what other diseases are actually can be. But I think the highlight of it was that lockdown that we had, gave a room that we can do things differently. Before now, the advent of ICE talking to you would have been moving through the traffic of Lagos to get to the studio. But we can hear ourselves now talking, and this is one of the improvements that COVID-19 has brought our way. We've seen instances where people now work from home, and these are things that people have been advocating for before COVID-19. But an average employer feels that we need to see your face before you can make the best. But people are making more productivity from home, and we've seen instances where infrastructures are being improved upon. People are having longevity of life because they need not to go through the stress of the traffic to get to their place of work. And the financial aspect of it is that everybody is now tech savvy. Even my mommy in the village wants a situation where you can send money to her via some of the new mobile money agents, and she can just capture it. You go around cashless. Before now we have this cashless policy that people are not embracing. But with the COVID-19, when you cannot even get to the bank, everybody had to settle down and look for a way to get their funds. So it's a blessing in disguise, and I think it will continue to improve more. But the area we need the government to assist us is to make sure that the infrastructure are actually worked on. We've had instances where some of these things have been attacked by certain set of people, causing breakdown or shutdown of the telecom system. But with security in town, you have more improvement in this aspect of financial inclusion, and everybody having a buy-in, which will lead us to what the CBN is asking banks to do. Now that we have more people on it, how secure is the platform?
Exactly, because that was, you just took you just took it out of my mouth. I was going to ask you how secure, because recently we saw that over 21 billion naira was transferred to over 8,000 Nigerians, I must say, because a system was hacked into. I mean, how secure is that system? That's what we also need to look at as well. But again, it's a concern that we need to look at. Is CBN prepared? Because we've seen a number of telcos have been issued what you call payment service bank license. You have the MTN, you have Airtel, apart from the other two that were in operation before the latest licenses. Talking about security, how well are we prepared to deal with this?
Yeah, well, I want to state, Frank, that I think the financial institutions and some of the fintech companies are actually working seriously to make sure that the funds of an average Nigerian is protected. But the area I want some of these financial institutions to work on, and CBN supporting them, is awareness. You see, every bank had that protection, a top-notch one that is difficult to hack. And don't forget, hacking is a profession. Some people do that for a living. And what they do is to see how to beat around your security. In fact, some of these financial institutions, the traditional one and the fintech, engage in this hacking business to see and test, the security measure that they've actually put in place. But what we've seen is that despite all this being put in place, an average person that is making use of some of these things does not have the knowledge of what to do at any point in time that mails or, certain links are sent to them. And that's where I feel that CBN needs to create more awareness, discourage the issue where you just click on links that is not verifiable. Do you know as simple as you having a link with HTTPS telling you that this site you're about to go to is more secure, and that one without S is not secure, can go a long way to educate an individual that when I see a link that is not carrying this particular thing, it shows it's not secure, and it's a function of you risking anything happening, and you don't just respond to anything. And I think the other aspect I want to encourage CBN to do on the financial institution is to make sure that their relationship to every customer is top-notch in the way that they can respond.
Hello, Mr. Olusegun. I guess we're having a bit of internet glitch there. Talking about cybersecurity, of course, is very, very crucial as well. I mean, the last story, of course, we have to look at today is the power generation as the government, the federal government, approving multiple projects to boost supply nationwide. Recently, we saw a decline in the electricity supply across, the country. Yes, and of course, that impacted heavily on the amount that was generated as well. We also heard that recently the Gencos complaining that their revenue actually declined, and that's because the distribution companies fail to fulfill their financial obligations in terms of revenue remittances to the account of the generating companies. It's a whole lot of issues, of course, we'll talk about in the course of the program today, which, of course, how to address some of the crises between the Gencos or the partners or some of the players in the industry. You have the TCN, you have the generating companies, and of course, you have the distribution companies as well. Those are the major, pillars that we have. Of course, you have about 11 units of electricity distribution companies, but of course it's a big one. Do we have Mr. Chesson online now? If you're there, hello, can you hear me? Yes.
I'm very much with you, and I've been hearing you.
Okay, let's try to wrap it up with that now. This approval is coming from the federal government, but TCN, of course, that belongs to the government as well. I think they're also crying. The Gencos are crying as well. The distribution companies are also crying. So, but then again, who will bail the cat out? That's the question.
Yeah, I think investing in the TCN is a right decision. And like people will criticize that it's still in the hand of the government, but I think it's the best approach as we speak, because they are the middleman between the generation and the distribution company. And situation where we are able to transport more from what is being generated. I can tell you that we are generating over 7,000 kilowatt, but it's been pretty difficult for this to be transmitted even to the disco. And a lot of task is still with the disco in making sure that some of the glitches that we are faced with in the area of metering, in the area of removing the cobwebs for them to be able to reduce the ATC losses needs to be worked on. But with the government investing more in the transmission is a right thing in the right direction, because some of the things that are being generated, I don't know if you've had instances where some of these things are transported even to neighboring countries because the TCN capacity to move some of these things from the Genco to the disco is not there. So I think with that investment, it's going to bring an improvement to our power supply All we are actually asking for is that we need that because it's strategic to business growth. If there is no power, there's nothing anybody can do. And with the crisis that we have in the energy sector, with the increase in the price of diesel, you discover that everybody is resorting back even to the power supply, which is putting so much pressure on what they have to deliver. So government should do more. With this investment, is the right thing in the right direction, and we can do better even without investment.
I think we should leave it there. Thank you so much, Mr. Olusegun Okwande, Society of ICANN. Thank you for coming on Business Breakfast.
Thank you very much for having me. My pleasure.
You have a great day. Yeah.